Where's he going? David, you come with me. Now, would you like to sit in the front row?
Any seats?
Yeah, just come up this way. Here, come here. Oh, can you get up there?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, you do that. And we're cool. Brilliant, enjoy. I'll be up beside you now in a minute. Come on up and sit on the stage, ladies. Yeah. Oh. Now, hi everybody. This is our second last event for the First Thought programme here at Galway this year. And we've been delighted at how many people came to hear our fantastic speakers. Is this working? It is working. So, masks to be worn, as you know, throughout the event. We are recording these sessions. So if anybody you know couldn't come to hear our wonderful speaker today, you'll be able to see it all again, or your chums will who couldn't come, on the GIAF YouTube channel tomorrow. All of our talks go up on that channel, so you can actually see other great things there too. We produce First Thought in conjunction with our education partner, NUI Galway, and we're very grateful to them for all they do for us. So Bonnie Greer is now a beloved honorary Irish woman.
Yes! I got my green.
I'm very proud to be one. But I'm going to let our wonderful interviewer, Roisin, draw her out on that whole matter. Absolutely. But I just want to tell you the story of the romance of the Galway Arts Festival, which is that Bonnie and her husband, David, haven't seen each other for 18 months since the beginning of the pandemic. David has been, we won't say trapped in France, but he was there all this time. And we are taking full credit for reuniting them in Galway.
Yes, David.
This makes us very, very happy indeed. So, Roisin, who all of you know because you read her every week in the Irish Times, and why wouldn't you? She's a feminist journalist and podcaster. Her column in the Times deals with all kinds of issues pertaining to women, men and children and is widely read. She's funny as well as fantastically informative, which is a great gift. She'll make you laugh. She's the producer with Kathy Sheridan of the Woman's Podcast, which has interviewed scores of interesting women since its inception. She's published 2 collections of her columns and a wonderful book about mother-daughter relationships, The Daughterhood. And there's a gorgeous interview with your mum today in the Times. Yeah. She has now written her own memoir at the age of 82. There is hope for us all.
Yes. Oh, thank you. She'd be so happy.
And Ingle.
Thank you.
So by that, because she's a truly wonderful person herself, it's not a surprise that she produced such a terrific daughter. Roisin was a staunch and influential supporter of the repeal movement, which I'm sure is going to get a bit of an airing here, which resulted in the repeal of the 8th Amendment in 2018. And she is my neighbour in the North Strand. Please welcome Roisin Ingle and Bonnie Greer.
Oh, thank you, Christine. You know, I have to just say, it's so lovely to be here. And even though you're all wearing masks, just to be with people again, you know, it's emotional in a way. And Katrina Crowe is she's a national treasure as well as this national treasure. And I'm so grateful to be asked here today. But what can I say about Bonnie Greer? I mean, it's up there, honorary Irish woman.
It's wonderful.
And I just want to say a few things about you first before we get started, and let everyone know that you are from Chicago, but you've been based in the UK for over 30 years. It's a long time. You wear many, many hats. You're an amazingly busy and productive woman. You're a playwright, you're a broadcaster, a boxing enthusiast, a champion of minorities and young people, which I know is very important to you, yes. A critic, a novelist, and why you're here, I think, is because 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, you appeared on Question Time on the BBC, sticking up for Ireland in a way that made us all stop, and it went viral, and it led to this honorary Irish woman tag. So I wanted to ask you about that first, Bonnie, because you might be sick talking about it at this stage, but you more or less told the British people, don't mess with Ireland, you know. Ireland is like really tight with the US. The final line of your amazingly brilliant monologue was, I'm from Chicago, and you know what they do in Chicago on St. Patrick's Day? They dye the river green. And it was just the most beautifully eloquent way. So we want to know, I suppose, what led to it and how this reaction felt to you? Because everyone was talking to you about it.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, to hear you play it back, it's beautiful. I really don't know. I've thought about this for a while. What made me say what I said the way I said it? And I don't know if something was happening on the panel, or if there was an attitude on the panel, or I was we were outside Liverpool, so was I looking at the audience? But I think in a way, and I can feel it now. I can remember a little bit. I think it was an attitude. I think it was the way it felt like Ireland was being tossed around like a football, as if it didn't have anything to say about anything. And everybody was very sort of cavalier about it, very casual. They weren't derogatory, but it just seemed... we have this expression in America called bald-headed stepchild, where you just, you kind of stand on the outside. Everybody talks over you. They talk around you. They talk about you. They talk at you, but they don't talk to you. They don't listen to you. So this, and I just thought, well, this is crazy. They obviously must have been talking about Ireland, but it was as if it didn't matter. Ireland didn't matter. And I guess I just got sick of listening to it. I got sick of the attitude. It wasn't anything horribly negative. It was just this cavalier tone that I thought I needed to for people to understand that Ireland is a very emotional part of America, even African Americans. I mean, Barack Obama's ancestry is Irish. I probably got somebody Irish in mind. Nobody knows. And so it's a very emotional thing. And for, on both sides, I mean, a lot of Trumpians are Irish American, which, I'll talk about. And then, there are leading feminists and civil rights leaders who are Irish American. So it's a very emotional thing. Ireland's extremely emotional in the United States. And it seemed to me that people in the United Kingdom didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was really... And first of all, I thought that it was going to emerge that you had some kind of Irish connection like Barack Obama, that's where you were coming from. But although your hair is red, that's not the case.
No, and I love it. Yes.
You are like...
I'm very happy to have it red, yes.
But the other thing that I want to sort of tell everyone is about how much... I mean, I don't know if you'd agree that you're kind of part of the establishment in Britain, but I'm going to list some of your things because it is kind of true. So this is all the connections. Like, you've been on boards... and many of them. You've been on the board at the British Museum, which is a huge deal, at the Royal Opera House, which I know you love as well, the Theatre Royal in Stratford. You're a former Chancellor of Kingston University, and you even have an OBE. So I don't really think, you can get more established than that. But having said all that, it was clearly important to you, and has been over the years, not just on that occasion, for you to talk about Britain and talk about the UK in terms of the problems and in terms of the issues that are there. But you do it from a place, I suppose, of love, or certainly you've made your home there. You're grateful to it for so much.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking about that, Roisin, yesterday. I mean, England gave me my husband. Scotland gave me the theatre. First place I did any theatre was Edinburgh Festival in Scotland. And Wales gave me literally a roof over my head and a bed to sleep in. So I don't have anything against the people of Great Britain. They are wonderful people. It's just that part of, and I guess this is a holdover from their colonial past, which is a huge, huge factor in the culture, that they, like with Brexit now, it's desperately important for them to be seen to be players, to be seen to be able to, we say in Chicago, run with the big dogs. And Ireland, as its first colony, becomes a part of that huge kind of big story they want to tell. I don't even think it's terribly conscious. I don't think people are terribly aware of it. But people don't look at Ireland as England's first colony, as the first place that they did what they did. They don't look at the fact that the idea, I mean, Cromwell's whole raison d'etre, besides getting rid of the crown, was also to take that over to Ireland and to subjugate Ireland and the famine. I mean, all of this should be taught. It's very important. But we're very, very stuck right now in the United Kingdom with a lot of the atrocities that were done in Africa during the colonial time, and should be. But the country never looks at its attitude about its neighbor across the Irish Sea. And now all of this madness is back again. So for me, it is from love, because I've been here, I've been there, and I've been a citizen since the middle of the 90s, but I came in 86. And you don't stay somewhere you don't care about. And they're very fine people, but the educational system is 2 or 3 tier, and it's still not an education for everybody, a good education. So people don't learn a lot of history. You have to go up the sort of educational ladder to get some really good history. And I guess now that I'm thinking again, I guess I wanted to say to that question time audience, which is a general audience, that, you know, Ireland, in fact, in relation to the United States, Ireland is, for better or for worse, an extension of the United States of America. That when Joe Biden makes his first official visit as president, I would be surprised that it wouldn't be to Ireland. He might need to do someplace else just for the business end of it. Yeah. But his heart is in Ireland. And so I wanted the British to understand that. And I wanted them to understand it in a way that you tell a friend, you know, you have to understand, don't mess with these people, because these people are special to some big people. And so you need to understand that. Yeah. That's important.
From a place of love, what do you think of the leadership in Britain at the moment?
You know, a lot of people, I would say Boris Johnson is one of the most intuitive men I've ever seen. He uses his intuition. He's very, very clever. When I was at the British Museum, I happened to stumble on Boris giving a lecture, an impromptu, whatever, in the Great Court. And he's very clever in that he plays a particular English trope that the English feel very comfortable in, which is the kind of bumbling, upper class, shambolic Englishman. Not ever talking about, of course, that on his father's side, he's descended from Turkish slaves, which is why he's got blonde hair, because the Turkish rulers back in the day were enslaved blonde women, Circassians. They were considered beautiful, so they took them into the harem, and Boris descends from that. So his ancestors were enslaved, which is why they've all got that blonde hair. And, you know, you want to think, well, this is an interesting thing. But he plays this kind of Billy Bunter, this kind of finest hour. He's completely aware of what he's doing. And it's a dangerous game, because what he's trying to create is what I call a finest hour trope, where I always call, you know, veterans of World War II, born in 58 and 68, kind of drive this narrative of Britain alone. It stood alone. It fought the Nazis. It fought the Germans. And to sort of kind of bring that spirit up, and which is probably why he was playing up to the United States in this new deal with Australia. And it's all very dangerous stuff, because it doesn't take on board that Britain was wiped out in World War II. Britain had to borrow money from the United States in World War II and didn't repay it till maybe 10 or 11 years ago. And that Britain is a middle-sized country that punches above its waist, but it's a middle-sized country. To come out of the biggest trading bloc in the world with its neighbor is insane. But Boris plays up that trope, and it's very much a trope that the English hold on to. It's a kind of identity. It's what Trump unconsciously plays on in the United States. This kind of fear of replacement. And the English are very afraid of being replaced. And that's a lot of what's going on.
That's so interesting. Such an interesting take on it. And I did not know about the Turkish thing.
Yes, the Circassian, if you look it up, the Circassian women, I think they came from the Caucasus or whatever, they were taken into the harems of the sultans for their blonde hair. And on his father's side, he's descended from these slave women. And that's why they were all blonde.
Well, listen, will you take us back to your sort of early days? Because we're talking the south side of Chicago.
Yes.
Your dad working in a factory.
Yes.
You're the eldest of 7 children.
Yes.
So very difficult for your mom, for your dad, just to live and to make ends meet. Tell us about where you came from.
Well, my late dad was born in Mississippi in the 20s, grew up in the 30s, in what's called Grand Mal segregation. In other words, the only way you could vote as a black person in Mississippi is if you passed a poll test. And that test was in Mandarin Chinese.
What?
If you couldn't pass it, you couldn't vote. Because each of the states, the elections are run by the states. The office is President of the United States. So each state elects the president. Each state has the right to determine its voting qualifications, and that was one in Mississippi when my father grew up. You literally had to go to the poll. If you couldn't do it, you didn't get a chance to vote. So my father, my grandmother, his mother, sent him out of the state of Mississippi because he was somebody who just wasn't going to take it. So he came up north to relatives, enlisted in the Army. I think probably in the middle of the 40s, came to England as part of transport troop. And in those days, believe it or not, African-American men were not routinely armed in a war. They didn't carry arms. So my father was here for D-Day. He turned 20 the day after D-Day. And he was just liberated by being in this part of the world, because he was treated like a human being as far as he could see. He saw black people who were then would have been called empire military, treated as human beings. Of course, that story was very, very complicated. But for my father, who didn't know the complication of the story, he just saw black men able to go into pubs because the pubs were segregated. So he could see them go in as RAF officers, and that was amazing to him. And then he went over he was in the last German offensive, the Battle of the Bulge, where a lot of those African-American soldiers were. Some of them were captured, and when they were captured, there were orders from the SS to mutilate them. And so African-American men knew if they got captured by the Wehrmacht, they would have a terrible death. And so my dad was there, and I think he went to Mauthausen as well, and concentration camp. And this part of the world, though, gave him his agency. So he came back, and he went to a dance hall and met my mother, and they loved to dance. And they got married because I was getting ready to be born, and my mother, and so...
It's the age-old story.
Exactly. So, they decided to get married, and there was a contest in the hospital that anybody who gave birth at the same time as then Princess Elizabeth, Duchess of Edinburgh, gave birth, they would all get a free nappy service. So mother and father, living in one room in a shared house and very young, were desperate for me to get born on the same day that this royal baby was going to get born. I didn't make it. I wasn't born. I was late. I was on time, but I was late as far as my mother was concerned. So she said, your name is Bonnie after him. He's Bonnie Prince Charlie. You're Bonnie. So,
Bonnie, that's an incredible
So, I was celebrating this guy's birthday until I was about 8. And then I said, finally, Mama, who is this? Who is this Bonnie Prince Charlie? And then finally I met him. with Camilla was there, and he came to the British Museum, and he knew me because I'd done something as charity, one of his charities, and I said, you know how I got the name Bonnie? He said no, and I told him, I think they had to take Camilla out of the room. She was laughing so hard. She couldn't stop laughing. So there was me. It was horrible. So the Catholic school was the really safe school for us to go to growing up in a really rough neighborhood. So my dad worked at night, 6 nights a week for the next 42 years. So that on an assembly line in a white working class suburb, which was quite dangerous at night to do that, so that we could go to school. And so I was raised Roman Catholic, baptized Roman Catholic, and went all the way to Roman Catholic school until my last 2 years of secondary school, high school, were at a secular school. But my entire upbringing, everything, was Roman Catholic, even taught by a group of nuns called the Oblate Sisters of Providence, who are out of Baltimore, Maryland, and they are an order of African-American women who taught during the Civil War Black children, which was against the law. So I had that kind of exposure to the church and to all of that.
So you're practically Irish as well with that.
Well, I went to DePaul University, so I had the priests and the nuns.
Bonnie, tell me a little bit about your mum, because I haven't heard much about her. I've read a bit about your dad, and all that story with the D-Day landings is extraordinary. What about her? Because times must have been so hard.
She was what used to be called a housewife, and I think she relegated herself to that. The older I get, as we get older, you either see one of your parents in the mirror as time passes. You look and there's your father or there's your mother, and it goes back and forth. So now I'm on the mother phase. I can see my mother. And she was a very complex woman. I'm very grateful. I didn't want her life, and she told me never to have it.
Did she?
But she was there every day. When we came home from school, she was there. She cooked, she washed, she kept the house tidy, she kept us tidy. She was always there. And I'm grateful to her because my mother, I know people whose mothers weren't always there for various reasons. They had to work or they couldn't be there. But my mother was there. When I went home at 3 o'clock, she was there cooking. And I think that gave me, as I'm talking to you now, Rasheen, I think it gave me a kind of stability in the world. And I'm not saying that that's a perfect, because there are there are problems with that as well, because that's not a good model. But I still had, my mother was there. And so I think it gave me a kind of stability in relation to being in the world and being where I wanted to be. But as a woman who champions women, I also knew what my mother was going through, because her marriage was the same age as me. So when I was an adolescent and screaming at her, her marriage was screaming at her too, because her marriage was in this adolescent phase. She was still a vibrant woman. She was still a beautiful woman. She still loved beautiful clothes. She still loved dancing. She had 7 children and a husband to take care of, quite conventional husband, meals on the table, meat on the plate, da-di-da-di-da. And she did that. But I knew the other side of her, and I think I'm living the other side of her. And I think the highest accolade you can ever have from a mother, one of them, is for your mother to say to you, if I could live my life over, it would be like you.
Wow. Did she say that to you? Bonnie, that's incredible. I'm so glad that she got to say that
Me
to
too.
you.
Me
And
too.
then you're looking at her in the mirror.
And now I'm seeing her, the good and the bad, but she was a very complex woman. And I think as you get older, as your life gets older, your parents come back to you. I mean, there's part of your life where you're running from them.
Yeah.
And just getting as far as you can from your parents. Part of going to universities is to get out of there, get away. Although I'm not so sure about this generation. But I know for sure, for mine, it was to get away. And then now you think, you are them in a way, and you are them continuing in a sense. So they don't ever. I don't know who's gonna cry. They don't ever really die.
It's so lovely way to think about it, because I know anyone in the audience whose parents aren't around, there's something gorgeous to think that we're continuing it on, and in that way they don't die. That is really.
I don't know what
lovely.
I'm thinking about. But she made me not want to have children.
Okay,
Because-
that's fascinating.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, you've gone.
I
From
love them,
You've
but
gone from this beautiful.
Yeah. No.
Now we're getting to the nitty. I think that's what's great about Bonnie is as well. You say one thing sometimes, and then you're right back with the truth in another way. So talk to us about that, because it's something women sometimes don't talk about a lot, actually.
Oh, I'm just weeping. My mother taught me that being a mother isn't a joke, and it isn't something to gratify your own thing about. It isn't something. Oh, thank you. I saw someone passing some credit. Thank you. That's so kind. Thank you. Thank God. It isn't something to gratify your own self about. It isn't something that you do to fulfill yourself. It isn't, being a helicopter parent. It's the extension of yourself in the world, and not in the egotistical way. And you have to, and it is a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility, because that kid is looking at you all the time, whether you're aware of it or not. That kid is looking, and that kid's making judgments. I'm going to be that way. I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And I thought, I didn't want that. Although I defend a woman's to the death, a woman's right to be a mother. I think that's extremely important.
Of course, but it's interesting, Bonnie, what you didn't want to be observed in that way. You didn't want somebody looking, and the responsibility of that almost.
No, I didn't want anyone's life to be burdened by that. I think about my parents every day, even at this point in time. And my sister is a grandmother. My brother is a grandfather. And it's a serious business. This is serious business, and because this is a human being, and this human being will propagate and carry this, and this is the template for nations as well. This is how nations function, and we don't think about the fact that we look to leaders, or we should have leaders that mirror the best part of ourselves, even if we don't know what that self is, to try to mirror the best part of yourself. And you can't do that every day as a parent. It's hard. Sometimes you don't. I always used to say I never wanted a kid to look in my face and me look like I'm bored with you. I'm too tired to deal with you. And that could
me feel terrible.
No. But I mean, that's because I'm also in the theater, so I snap everything. But just thinking this, what that kid might hold that image.
Yeah.
And what will she do?
But what did you do? Because I'm sure you must have looked at your mother sometimes, and she was not happy with you and not happy with her life. Yeah. But look at you. Look how you turned out, despite that.
I think. Well, first of all, she told me don't do it. She told me don't do it.
She told you don't do it.
She told me don't do it.
Oh my God.
She told me don't do it. That's the first thing she said. I remember because she cooked all day long. She had a lot of kids. And I remember looking at her once over a pot, and she had like her hair. It looks like some cliche. She had her hair down her face, and she was stirring a pot. And she looked at me and said, "Don't you ever do this." So I said, "Okay, Mommy, I won't."
And you did it.
I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't.
Do you know, for someone who doesn't have children, you have one of the deepest insights into parenting that I've ever heard. It's kind of extraordinary.
Well,
I'm learning, and I'm not very good at
it. I don't think, it's a natural thing to be a parent. Everybody wants to have a child. It's natural. So people shouldn't be denied that right or anything like that. Or if you don't want to, you shouldn't be denied that either. But it's natural. Most people have kids. If they can do it, they do it. That's a natural thing. And I think sometimes, because I've taught young children, and, you know, and disadvantaged young children, and you know, economically disadvantaged, and they come sometimes out of homes where their parents are stressed. They're just trying to keep the roof over their head, clothes on the body, food on the table. They don't have time. You know, people don't have time when a kid says, my mother called me, I was a blue skies kid. I would walk down the street because I was talking, as you can tell, very early. And I would say to my mother, why is the sky blue? And I said, I have no idea. Why is that bird up there? Well, I have no idea. You have to answer those questions.
Yeah, well, you do.
You do.
So you started writing quite early, quite young. I think we can all probably imagine that Bonnie was quite a precocious child. I'm going to use that word. Like talking and doing and creating, you know, very vibrantly from an early age. You were writing, so I think you wrote your first play at 9 or something like that.
Yes, I can remember the reaction to it, too. I wrote a nativity play, because I wrote all the plays at school. And I wrote about the manger. And I remember the nuns read the play, and I heard them, because I have very good ears. I heard them say, how did she know that? And I didn't understand for a long time what they meant. But of course, because my mother was pregnant all the time, what was the big deal? Obviously, the Virgin Mary she was pregnant. How was she going to get him born? So I showed her pregnant. I was like, and they were like, you know, they didn't want to censor me, but they couldn't show me. Oh my God. And then another time I was at school, and the priest came in, you know, once a week to lecture us on catechism. He did the Holy Trinity. And he said, no one understands. I said, I do. And he said, he turned and looked at me. And I said, well, it's like water. It's like you can have water in ice, you can have water in vapor, and you can have water liquid, but it's the same water. And you know what he said to me? It's a mystery. And that was the end of it. That was the end of the discussion. And I had to sit down in the back, and everybody was looking at me. And I thought, I understand what's
Yeah, you're not supposed to explain the bloody mystery.
I mean, it's just like, that's it.
But you were going to go into law, despite all this writing. And then I think somebody, as happens in our lives sometimes, some maybe well-meaning person decides to tell you that, you know, it wasn't the place for a woman.
He wasn't a well-meaning
okay.
person. And
I was trying to be generous.
No, but, you know, every woman who is my age who's in the law, I have total admiration for, like Hillary Clinton. These people went through law school.
Yeah.
I was in this program for, you know, young black people in I think it was the middle 70s, who wanted to be in law school. And so I took a summer course. I really wanted to be, because the civil rights movement was full of lawyers. And then there was Watergate, full of lawyers. So it was lawyers and journalists. I thought, I really want to be in the law. And so I would go to the court as part of this program and sit in the back and watch the court. This woman believed me, this happened. I tell women this all the time. They look at me like I'm crazy. This woman lawyer, I'm going to say woman lawyer so you understand, she came in to do her job. She was wearing a pantsuit. These called pantsuits. Before she opened her mouth, this lawyer said, and the judge said, you have to leave my courtroom because women don't come into my courtroom in pants. She couldn't present her case. She had to go. I sat back and I thought, am I going to be in a profession like that where somebody actually, you can't open your mouth? So I thought, no. So like I say, all the women who stayed, I have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, it's interesting because our former president, Mary McAleese, was told something very similar, but then just decided to
She
ignore
stuck it out.
and she carried on.
She went through it.
Became, I think, one of the first women to go through the bar in
Yes,
North.
but that was the atmosphere where you were told you couldn't dress like that. Your voice was too high.
Well, yeah.
And then add ethnicity on top of it, on top of that toxic brew. I just thought I wanted to do other things with my life. I couldn't.
It might be a good time, because we'll talk more about where you went from there, but actually I'd like to just ask you about how you view America at the moment. I mean, there was the Obama sort of reign, and obviously from the same part of Chicago as you, so I'm curious as to what your thoughts about him, because I know they changed. You weren't so happy at the beginning, but you became happier. And then obviously Trump, and now Biden. And also, maybe we'll start with this, is in Texas, the recent terrible restrictions of people's reproductive health. So when you look at America now and taking all of that recent stuff into account, what are you thinking?
Well, I heard about Barack Obama when I was living in London, and this young Harvard law student, because Obama went to Harvard, said that Barack Obama was a senator from the state of Illinois. And the first thing I said was, there is nobody named Barack Obama from Illinois. Okay, that's not true. Because when I was growing up, if your name was that and you were black, you changed your name to that. Okay, so I thought the first thing I said was, "What's his real name?"
Right.
And he said, "What do you mean?" Because he's too young. He was too young to know what I was talking about. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, what's his real name? Because you're not born a Barack Obama." So then I thought, who is this? Then I heard him talk, and he didn't have a Chicago accent.
Okay.
So I thought, well, so I got to know his story, and then that was great. But I was one of those people at the beginning, I thought, what is this? Because that's not the name you have coming out of Illinois, and certainly not out of the south side of Chicago. That is a assumed name. So the Obama presidency was, I was going to say a fluke, but you can't be a fluke if you're two-term president, so you're not a fluke. I think it was a moment in American history. I think it was the beginning of the rise of the next generation, Obama's generation. And this generation were people that the generation before me, fought so that they could go to university. I mean, I couldn't go to Harvard, not because I didn't have the brains to go to Harvard, but because I couldn't get into Harvard anyway. Whereas we fought so that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama's generation could go to Harvard and Yale. So that was that generation of people. And so they were a little bit more comfortable. They were a little bit more, felt a little bit more entitled.
Did that annoy you, Bonnie? Is that what you're saying?
It's very good that you picked that up, Roisin. It's very, very good. I was annoyed when they did Summers on Martha's Vineyard. I thought, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. But that was their milieu. I mean, they weren't doing it to be, they weren't doing it to be negative. That was the set. Whereas mine was working class, being in the street. Their set was Harvard and Yale. So they did naturally what they do. And I think President Obama missed the fact that, and Hillary Clinton did too, although she's a more complicated situation, missed the fact that they're elite. And it's hard to tell people that when also they're in a racist society, when also they're in a sexist society, that you're also an elite as well. Hillary was completely destroyed. I mean, she destroyed her own campaign. She made a lot of mistakes that were like, I couldn't believe. But a lot of it came down to the fact that Hillary moved in circles that she lost track. Even though she was fighting for people, she lost track of them. That she didn't go to Pennsylvania. Even Bill was screaming, "You're not going to Pennsylvania?" She didn't go because she assumed they had Pennsylvania. Obama, there was a part of the demographic that President Obama, even though he was kind of it, he didn't know it. And you all know, everybody knows this. You can hear something in somebody's voice and you can think, that's not quite me. You know, they're standing up for me, but that's not quite me. And I respect that. I'm for that. I'm with that. I'm down with that. But they don't come from where I come from. And you can hear it. So, in a sense, President Obama's presidency was a moment where that generation was able to get that ascendancy, and Kamala Harris is part of that whole flow. Cory Booker is part of that whole flow of people who really got the benefit of the civil rights struggle and open equal education. So that complication is there.
Yeah.
Now, what Trump did, which is what is really interesting, because he has a large African-American male following. Now, you have to ask yourself, why? What is that about? Partly from President Obama's administration, certainly through Hillary Clinton's campaign, there was a huge foregrounding of women. And I think a lot of ethnic minority men particularly felt left out of this flow.
Interesting.
Whereas Trump performs a kind of masculinity that ethnic minority men of a certain kind really like, even though they don't want to admit it. Trump performs a particular masculinity. And so it appeals to ethnic minority men of a certain kind of guy. It appeals to white working class men. It appeals to, particularly to that demographic, it's a male posturing. And it comes from America's position in the world as a male country. America is a male country. It's a man's country. No matter, all the things that happen in it, the trope of America is masculine. And so anybody who performs masculinity, particularly the way Trump did, he's also very intuitive, like Boris. And he knew that kind of thing was latent. It was there. It's always been there. Yeah. The Civil War on the southern side, was a performance of a particular kind of masculinity. The West, a performance of a particular kind of masculinity. In fact, the Western is an offshoot of Southern white men who decided to leave the South and go out and conquer the West. And so you have the idea of the lone cowboy, which is basically from that whole sort of shape of masculinity. So the big battle always in the United States is between this masculine, conquering, colonizing, warmongering, capitalistic entity versus everybody else. And it's Afghanistan then becomes a kind of field of tragedy in which we had the wrong president at the wrong time saying the wrong thing, and it unleashed that masculinity into a foreign country where it felt it had no obligation to learn the language, no obligation to learn the customs, no obligation to learn what was going on. They were just chasing Al-Qaeda like, in the old Westerns through a country. And then finally, Sitting Bull comes down from the mountains and runs them out of the country. And I think until and Boris is trying to do that Boris is trying to masculinize Britain. So when we see that being played out, it's deeply unconscious, and even as I'm saying, I didn't know I was going to say it, but it's a deeply unconscious thing in America.
Yeah. And in a way, everywhere. And do you see this as the last gasp? Because that's what people said about Trump. And you mentioned Boris there doing the similar thing. Is this because inevitably things are changing, or are you hopeful that things are changing and that the masculine force is going to come in even stronger as a result? That because there's a hint of something else happening. Yes.
So maybe if Bonnie...
I couldn't see you there, Katrina, so
no
sorry.
I'm sure the audience would like to ask you a few questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Answer that first, because I'm dying to hear the answers.
I'll do it quickly.
Thanks, Katrina.
Cool. We didn't even know what we were.
I'm just curious about that. And then we'll definitely, so get your questions ready. We'll come for a few questions.
What were you...
Well, basically, I'm just wondering, this idea that it's the last gasp of patriarchy, I suppose, or the last gasp of masculinity, the Trump, the Boris, I suppose, Taliban's in a whole other...
No, because...
I'm just trying to be hopeful, that's what
I'm being realistic.
I know.
The patriarchy is supported by women.
I know.
So that's how it stays.
Yeah.
And it's in the fashion industry, it is... The last piece I wrote for the New European is about the fact that women's bodies are the first sites of colonization and continue to be so. And we women participate in it. So I don't think so.
Okay. Thanks. We will come to some questions. We have a roving mic around. I'd love if you'd talk about Texas, and then maybe somebody has a question about that. But I would just want to say thank you so far. I mean, I know there's more to come, but oh my goodness!
But thank you all. We just were talking so much. Oh, thank you.
I mean, you just gave us such an incredible history of America recently. You know, I just thought it was so incredibly done. It certainly made me think of things in a different way, and that's what you do, Bonnie. And just thank goodness that you're in the world. And your mother's right. You know, you're living this life. But imagine what she would have done.
Mommy, yeah.
Yeah, you were credit to her. What was her name?
Willie Mae.
Willie Mae.
Like the blues song. Yeah, right.
She's in my mind now, Willie Mae. So who would like to ask a question? There's a man up at the back.
Yes, sir.
Hi, not a question about Texas, but a question about Chicago. Galway and Chicago are beloved sister cities. A lot of people in Galway are very
Chicago?
You bet.
I didn't know that.
Very close. This college gave Mayor Daley an honorary degree in law, and he's a freeman of the city as well. Mm-hmm. What's your take in Chicago these days?
I'm glad that the mayor is the mayor, Lori Lightfoot. I think she's doing a great job. But Chicago is rife with so much segregation. It's still there. And a lot of the segregation has permeated and is permeating through the society, still is there, and people are still struggling. It's very difficult there, but it's a wonderful city. It's a wonderful city, and there's a spirit in that city, but it's severely racially segregated, and it was when I was growing up, and it still is. Still is.
Thank you for that. Anyone else got a question? Two ladies in the middle.
I lived in the US for a while and in England, and I would have said that for many people from Europe, they don't understand the idea of racial segregation the way it is all across American society. Just your comment on that.
No, that's true. I mean, not that there isn't segregation in Europe and not that there isn't segregation in Britain. Of course there is. It's not grand mal segregation. It's not out there as a part of the structure of the society. It exists, but it's not structured in. It's structured in the United States, and it shows itself in a lot of different ways. Right now, we're having a big struggle over voting, if you can believe, a Voting Rights Act so that everybody can vote. And of course, the subtext of it is to prevent people of color from voting because they are dominant. We are now the cities. And the cities are where the large population is. So if you can control that vote, then you control who votes, and then you control that population. And that's really what's going on. And people know that that's what this is all about. And Trump's total subtext is basically replacement theory, replacement myth that white people are being replaced by people of color. And that's really what's happening. So you guys got to fight. I mean, there may be a battle right now as we speak in Washington. I don't know what's going on with that Save the January 6th march. There may be something going on right at this very moment. I don't know, but no, people don't know how it. They know about it in practice. They don't know about it structured into the fabric of the society, and that's what the United States is.
Thank you for that. Question from the lady behind you.
Thank you. Great to see you in person. Thank you for such interesting insights.
Thank you.
I was struck by your assessment of Barack Obama and that generation having some distance actually from the people from the previous generation and not necessarily appreciating that. I feel I'm seeing that in a lot of younger women who actually reject. There's some of the discussion online to older women who would have been in the situation. I mean, not being able to wear trouser suits, the whole attitude, which is not that long ago in professions particularly. Given how readily women resign their rights, what can we do, and how should younger women be made to appreciate how fragile our rights are? We talk about Texas, but it's everywhere. We're even losing our words at the moment.
It's what we're up against is the fact that this generation coming up, which is a huge generation of people, as big as the boomers, as my generation were, brilliant young people, absolutely brilliant, and they care a lot about the world and what's happening in the world, more than my generation did in a way, in terms of looking at the whole picture. The other part of it is that they're very heavily influenced because there's a lot of stuff coming at them. So at one point, on one hand, social media is great because it has democratized thought. Before you had to publish a book or you had to get on a faculty. Now you can say what you feel and people can actually follow you. The downside of that is that you can say what you feel and people can actually follow you. And so what happens is we need to teach, and that's what I'm doing at the British Museum. I'm back there working on a project with the director of the British Museum called Era of Reclamation. And one of the things that we're working on is how do you create critical thinking? Not criticizing, but how do you actually create critical thinking so that young people can actually get a range of options and begin to think that one is not as good as that one. That's a bad idea. That's a great idea. That's okay. And to help young people really develop those critical thinking skills so that as they go forward in life, they can actually make a choice, not based on, oh, they like me or they don't like me, but I've actually thought this all the way through to the end.
Such a really important thing. I mean, imagine if it was taught in schools. Imagine if we learned it from age 12 or 13, how to think critically. And I mean, it sounds so simple and so obvious, but again, maybe it's back to what you're saying. It's easier to control people who aren't thinking critically, isn't it?
Or it's easy. I mean, this is also a generation who wants they want to be liked. I mean, this is very important, and it's amazing for me to observe how important being liked and not being outside of the field of likeness is very important. This is not a generation of rebels in the sense that they don't want to be outside of it. Now, whatever it is, they don't want to be outsiders. That always puts you in a situation to sort of be led. And I think we have to encourage young people to be more rebellious and to be with each other.
Yeah.
Not out to older people or younger people, but to really not be afraid to be alone. Not to be afraid to be outside of the loop. Not to be afraid. And I know there's consequences because people don't have friends, they get canceled, they don't have jobs, all kinds of stuff. But if we don't help young people to learn to stand and not be afraid to say what you know, not what you think, what you know, we are going to be in real trouble. Real trouble.
Yeah, and there's some young people, lovely young people in the audience here, so I hope they're listening to that too. And challenging each other is really important. Probably have time for one more. There's a gentleman up the very back of the room.
And just to add quickly in that, when someone says something to you, ask them where they got that from.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because people don't do that. They'll hear something, you know, but they don't ask, where'd you get that from?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about Texas and the kind of, I suppose, regression, of women's rights and equality. Like here in Ireland, we've seen massive change in the last 10, 15 years. We've seen the repeal of the Eighth and same-sex marriage referendum. But it seems to me that there's a growing fear on the right in America, and they seem to be running as fast as they can towards their safe havens, and you can see that now in Texas, I think. So I just wanted to ask your opinion about it. As I see it, you know.
Well, America is becoming like Britain and like the rest of the world, what's called minority majority. It's going to happen. It either going to happen in my lifetime or afterwards. And by that, minority majority means that there's going to be more people of color than there's going to be more people who are not of color. It's just as simple as that. I mean, to use that term. So within that parameter are individuals who are doing everything they can to stop that from happening, either by making sure that people of color literally are not born, to restricting them from participating in the democratic process, to locking them up for different various infractions, for all sorts of reasons. And it is happening in Hungary, it is happening in America, not so much in Britain, but it's happening underneath. It's happening in France, might be happening in Ireland. But it's about stopping this reality, because by the end of this century, that's the way it's going to be, and nothing's going to change it. So I think we always have to look at the fact that all the changes that you see, a lot of them in terms of demographic and political changes, is to stop this minority-majority world into coming into being. The world is going south, not the global north, it's the global south. And the more that we can understand that and accept it, then we're going to be better off on this extremely crowded and dirty planet. We'll be able to find a way to live on it. But it's a big battle, and I may not live to see it sorted, but that is what it is. That's the root of all of it. Replacement and people's fear of replacement.
It's horrible to hear you say it so starkly, but like it's the truth.
It's huge, and just one quick thing before we go. Prohibition, which was a law enacted in the United States of America, to believe it or not, if you can believe it, this became the constitutional amendment. You could not drink alcohol in the United States, so you can imagine how far that went. And the law was specifically set up to prevent the ascendancy of the people who drank. And who were they?
Yeah, I wonder.
The Irish, the Italians, Jewish people who had them at their services. That was that demographic trying to stop them from taking over the United States. And it didn't happen. It didn't work. It's not going to work this time either.
I'm glad you said that. I have one more little question, if it's okay, Katrina. I imagine you're very often the only person of colour in a room. Would that be fair? Or you have been in your life? And I think, I'm not sure, we might have one other person of colour in this audience particularly. And Ireland is thankfully a very different place to say what it was. We have more of all sorts of people here, thank goodness, making us a more richer, vibrant country. And yet we still have some of the problems that every other country has. I'm really interested, just before you go, could you talk about white allyship? Could you talk about, Emma Dabry has this book, What White People Can Do Next. Obviously after George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, got momentum. But it's something I think we all need to think about, and we're all in this room, mostly white Irish people. What should we be doing to ensure that, young, any age people of colour in Ireland are embraced and, protected and cared for and nurtured in the way that they should be?
Well, one thing that Paul Gilroy, and I hope I'm not misstating him, he will tell me if I am, Paul Gilroy said he's tired of talking about race. Scientifically, it's a nonsense. And that's the first thing that we really have to get inside of ourselves. It does not exist scientifically. We come from the same female ancestor. We are related, okay? So I think if we take, now race exists sociologically.
Yeah.
It exists politically, yes. But if we get to the point, we need to get to the space where we know that exists, but scientifically and in reality, it does not exist. So we can position ourselves in that space and look at the rest of the reality that's happening, and it's real. If we can look at that reality, it's sort of like a mathematics problem or a science problem. The thing doesn't really exist. So therefore, how do we deal with the consequences of the thing that doesn't really exist? Because it's killing people, it's hurting people, it's harming people. If we do that, then we can then begin to see the solutions. And our children are teaching us the solutions. We got kids walking around here who've got white parents, black parents. I mean, what do you call these people? And they're not going to be called anything but human beings. So if we decide in ourselves that that's our position, knowing full well that there is racism, there's segregation. I mean, I think I was kind of racist profiled coming over here too.
Oh my goodness.
But nevertheless, that's real, but that's not in yourself. We're all the same species. If we weren't, we wouldn't be wearing these masks in this room, okay? Because the other species wouldn't be getting COVID, right? So we're all the same. So from that point, we then begin to tackle the issues that come from misunderstanding this and working from a position where love is a possibility, always. That's what Dr. King worked on. That's what James Baldwin worked in. Love. And I don't mean schmaltzy. I mean the fact that at the end of the day, we're all going to go out of here the same way, just like the way we came in. And that's what it is. That's what love is. And we realize that, then we can start to find the solutions to everything.
Okay, I'm so glad we ended on a positive note. The absolutely incredible Bonnie Greer, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Inspiration, inspiration, inspiration. Where do we stop? I would love to see Bonnie and Greta Thunberg sitting on this stage together, maybe next July. Where you've got two ends of a very interesting spectrum, but both of them share that fantastically inspirational and expansive view of humanity. And that is so wonderful. She's inspired many of us, my generation particularly, all our lives. She's continuing to inspire young women today and young men. And that's what's so wonderful about her. And she is eloquent. You could listen to her talking for another 3 hours.
Yeah.
When she got into her riff, oh my God, I didn't want it to stop. So that's me just paying homage and sucking up here because she likes me. I want to say to you all that she writes a column for the New European once a week, I think. And that is a journal that's available online. So just Google it and have a look at it. I know you'll be wanting to read more of her now and to keep up to date with her opinions on everything that's happening. And I also want you to thank the wonderful Roisin Ingle, who always prepares beautifully for everything and who's a great friend to the Galway Festival. Thank you, Roisin.
Thank you. Lovely. So grateful. Thank you.
There are some tickets left for the Mike Ryan event at 6 o'clock. If any of you want to come to that, you can just go online and book a ticket very quickly. Thank you all for coming. Meditate on what you heard here today. This has been, I think, so far one of the most inspirational sessions we've had, and packed with amazing good sense as well as that beautiful poetic sensibility.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
That was wonderful.
When it's coming at you. And so all of you were absolutely superb. Thank you for coming to see me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You are something.
Oh, thanks.